Okay, please take a seat. We're going to start now. Also the people in the back. And I'm very glad that we're going to have now our panel 7 already on the important issue of disinformation and cyber threats. And I'm happy to introduce to you Zoe van Doren, Policy Advisor for Global Digitalization and Innovation at the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, who will be our moderator.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the microphone is working. Please take a seat, settle down. We have 75 minutes for this really interesting topic. I hope we get enough information into that. We are talking about disinformation and cyber threats that in the West Balkan, like in many other regions, are growing. We see growing divisions within the society that are being exploited by external factors, such as Russia, but also by internal actors that abuse this. Like in Germany, we see an increase of harmful speech, an increase of disinformation that has detrimental effects on society, on democracies, on the trust in institutions, and is influencing the political process. Simultaneously, we have an increase of cyber threats in the region, and yeah, this is what we're going to talk about. I don't want to take up too much time for the introduction because we have a wonderful assessment just in a minute. I have 3 wonderful panelists with me here, so I'm very happy to welcome you. Right to my right side, we have Tamara Vujovic, the Minister of Culture and Media in Montenegro. Welcome. You were voted into parliament 4 years ago, so 2020, and have a background in medicine, which you also taught. And you also, I want to point this out, were the Secretary General of an NGO called Citizens Alliance. So you have a plethora of perspectives that you can bring, not only government, but also civil society. And I'm very interested to hear that in a bit. So very welcome on stage.
Thank you, Zoe.
Next to you, I'm allowed to welcome Katharina Kruk, who's public policy lead for Central and Eastern Europe at Meta. So we have a platform perspective here. I'm very happy about that as well. You worked previously in the European Parliament and also in the Parliament in Ukraine and the Ukrainian government as a political analyst and information security expert. I think you're going to bring some controversy with you, or hopefully this will add some nice talking points to the panel. And last but not least, Oliviera Nikolic, who is a journalist for foreign media in Montenegro. You've worked for the BBC, the Deutsche Welle, Agence France Presse, Radio Free Europe, so a lot of different news agencies, and now lead the Montenegro Media Institute, which also does a lot on media literacy in the region. And you are the rapporteur for the working group, so you will be the first to have the word today. Just 2 sentences on housekeeping before that. We'll have the presentation from you, and then we're going to go into a discussion on the working group recommendations within the panel for about 20 minutes, I would say, and we're going to be very specific on this list of recommendations. And then we open the stage a little bit. I'm sure you're all familiar with the fishbowl format, so there's an empty chair. Please use it. I will let you know when we open it to the audience, and we can go into maybe a broader debate as well about disinformation in the region, and have about 10 minutes of a wrap-up later. We will take 15 minutes longer because we started a little bit late, but we have a long lunch break, so I hope that's not a problem for anybody. And with that, over to you for the report.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my full gratitude for the help and support of the civil organization from the region, which work very devoted during the summer and holiday season, and helped us in the recognizing the main challenges related to disinformation and cybersecurity threats, and which help us a lot in preparing the recommendation. And also my full gratitude to the Aspen Institute and Southeast European Association, which helped us a lot leading very nice this process. As you know, I believe that there is no need to go more in details. We are very aware of the global uncertainty and the increased risk from disinformation and cybersecurity threats, especially in the vulnerable Balkan region. such a kind of situation calls for the action, all actors from the Western Balkans, from the governments, from the civil society, academics. Also, we are calling for cooperation with the very large online platforms such as Meta and the others. And in this process, we address and also expect the assistance of the European Union through the Berlin process. Going in the center with the recommendation as we see the problem and the disinformative house and the very large online platforms such as Meta and the other social networks are source of disinformation. So this call the need and for the cooperation of the Western Balkan countries with the very large online platforms, and we recommended the possibilities to appoint the regional legal representatives and to expand of the code of the practice against disinformation to the Western Balkan. Also, new media legislation in the European Union is seen from our perspective as a huge opportunity to fight against disinformation, harmful speech, and so on and so far. And in order to enable the equal possibilities to the citizens and the population in the Western Balkans, such as in the European Union, in the terms of the security and online safety, we are calling for the Western Balkan countries to align their legislation with the DSA and other media acts, and to develop the specific roadmaps for each countries in that regard. In all these things, it's very important having in mind the lack of capacity of our institution in the Western Balkan countries, and also the fact that sometimes some legislation changes could go in the undermine the trust in media freedom and freedom of speech. The Western Balkan countries should very much pay attention that any intervention, any legal intervention, should not undermine the trust, the media freedom and the freedom of speech, and should take care very much attention and pay attention on the balance between the media freedom and the fight against disinformation, harmful speech, and so on and so forth. When we are speaking about the cybersecurity in the region, although we can say that there is stronger cooperation between the Western Balkan countries, but still they failed or they struggle with the cooperation in the field of exchange of information. And that regard, the main our messages and recommendation is building trust in that regard, building cooperation, address the technical barrier, and harmonize the legislation in the region. As you can see, all this is effort. It search for the effort of all the actors in the let's say in the system. From our side, Western Balkan countries, governments, academics, civil society organization, media. We also need the very much help of and political will of the European Union to help us in that regard. For example, it would be great if there is a possibility that the disinformation are the part of the progress report of each country of the Western Balkans, in order to assess the level of the threat which comes from the different countries and different local and foreign actors, in order to follow and track disinfo trends, in order to align the measures and instruments with the EU. That would be also helpful. So, general, to conclude, this called the action of all actors. the actors from the Western Balkan countries, from our society, multi-stakeholders efforts, and also we need the help of and assistance of the EU, and of course we hope in a better cooperation with the very large online platforms in combating disinformation and cybersecurity threats. Thank you for
that great overview, and I would like to hand over to you, Minister, for a reaction maybe. I also read the report and wrote down a line that it highlights a sometimes obvious lack of political will among the West Balkan political elite to act within the EU scale of values and to address disinformation. And I would like your opinion on this assessment of the report and maybe some context.
Thank you, Zoe. And first of all, dear ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for invitation to be a part of such an important civil society and think tank forum, because I think it's the most vital, one of the most vital energies that drives us and give us some new insight in creating policies. So I'm thankful and grateful to be here. And of course, at the beginning, I want to say that I'm not so familiar with the situation in other Western Balkan countries, and that is one of the issues that we should state as the first point, because not all the Western Balkan 6 has aligned its policy with European Union, such as Montenegro did, especially in the area of cybersecurity or in the area of disinformation. So it's very difficult to speak as a Western Balkan as a whole in this manner and to answer the question from the position of Western Balkans, because we are not all on the same page, I would say, when it comes to the policies concerning the disinformation and cybersecurity. I want to refer on the Olivera's insights and recommendation at the very beginning. In response to this valuable input from civil society, I am pleased to announce that we are embarking on an evaluation of 2 new EU regulations, Digital Service Act and Media Freedom Act in Montenegro, even though as a candidate country we are, well, not in a rush to do so. We just adopted 3 new media laws in June this year, and we got a positive interim benchmark assessment from European Commission by doing so. So for the moment, we are aligned for the time being, but at the same time we are trying to well analyze what from the Digital Service Act and Media Freedom Act we have to incorporate in Montenegrin media laws, and not just in media laws, because those 2 directives interfere to many other laws in Montenegro. But I'm proud to say that in our media laws we already implemented something from the EMFA, such as, I would just state this, some recommendation, disclosure of sources, they are already protected by Montenegrin law, then urgent court proceeding for hatred speech, then journalist independence, or to say without interference, without political interference, have a free editorial policies, then many articles about ownership, transparency, that is very important, and less political influence in the public broadcasters. So these are some things that are in the EMFA that are already in the media law. Of course, there is much more to do, especially in Digital Service Act, but we plan to do such. We will establish a working group, I think beginning next year, from the representative from non-governmental organization, media entities, media association, and academic community, just to see what we could and how we will make a time frame or a pathway to integrate DSA in our legislation. Another recommendation, which was low-hanging fruit, maybe so does not need too much time to discuss. It is a balance between the freedom of expression and prevention of dissemination of harmful content. Of course, needless to say how important it is for Montenegro, and we are primarily guided by the standards established in European conventions. That is close and very fruitful cooperation with the Council of Europe and coordination with the representative of the media community. Then another recommendation was And then another recommendation was, I think, media literacy. You did not specify it now, but media literacy is also low-hanging fruit, but there are many more things to do about media literacy. So we adopted a media strategy in Montenegro last October, following the action plan, which includes 15 planned measures at initial phase. One of the crucial ones is the forming of a national council for systematic planning and monitoring of all activity, kind of national council for media literacy, to develop a multi-year plan to raise the level of media literacy, organizing training, campaigns, develop necessary manuals, and so on. Then another, it was a need for cooperation between all the Western Balkan 6 in this particular topic. As we know, the Berlin process started in 2014, and it is vital for improving regional cooperation and integration of the countries of Western Balkan 6 into the European Union. And I have to say, the cybersecurity and disinformation problems were at the early years. Sometimes it was a topic of Berlin Process Summit, sometimes some years it was not. And I'm very glad that this year we have a whole panel that is dedicated to it, because I think improving security standards is essential for the next years, because threats are more cyber and more digital, more than any other threats which are physical. So I think this is the reason that we have to, in ideal conditions, we would have to, all the Western Balkan states, to form a strong alliance against the disinformation and against the cybersecurity. But it is among the recommendations which are tough nut to crack, because of the reason I said at the beginning, that we are not on the same level, and we do not, as a 6 countries, we do not have the same answers to that question. So I am strongly for the better monitoring of implementation of cybersecurity laws in Western Balkans, and I hope it will be in every European Commission report how every country per se, how every country is implementing and how it is doing their strategies for cybersecurity and disinformation. And of course, we are strongly for the forming of strategic partnership to fight against disinformation and cybersecurity under Berlin Process umbrella. I saw in the recommendation that it was supposed to be under RCC, as CEFTA is. Maybe that is a thing to discuss and to consider, but I don't think for the near future, but for the, let's say, next few years, maybe something of that kind would be of a very interest of all the Balkan 6. I will not go into the details of what Montenegro does. I don't know how much time more I have, but I would like to specify one more thing that I am very proud of, and that is the forming of the Western Balkan Cyber Capacity Center in Podgorica, in capital city of Montenegro, as one of the examples of international cooperation between France, Slovenia, and Montenegro. I think that is a result of a Berlin process and the result of cooperation, and a very essential one. And we are supposed to have a management board with the 2 representatives of Montenegro, 2 from France and 2 from Slovenia. But the other countries of Western Balkan 6 should appoint their national coordinators. All the Western Balkan countries should cooperate, of course, and establish uniform type of response to a cyber threat. And I'm glad to say that law on informational security already passed the committees in Montenegrin parliament, and in the next few days it will be adopted in Montenegro. And that law holds Directive 2555, which talk about measures for high command level of cybersecurity, which is adopted in Union. So I think we are very fast, very forward in adopting that kind of a law. And of course, in the near future, according to this law, Montenegro will establish a cybersecurity agency. So as for a recommendation for a tough nut to crack, I hope that EU will support the participation of Western Balkan countries in an ESA in European Union for cybersecurity, just to be supported by European European countries to have the same type of answers and to know about the threats immediately and so on. So that is for the time being, and I'm sorry if I overcrossed the time.
No, not at all. Thank you so much. I did have the question like of the concrete steps you're undertaking, and I think you answered that as well. And you showed that the statement of obvious political will or lack of will, therefore, does not fit as perfectly to Montenegro as maybe to other countries. I do want to go over to the platform perspective with you, Katerina, and the report calls for it, and Oliviera also just mentioned for the appointment of a regional legal representative for the region. What is your stance on this, and also maybe on the expansion of the code of disinformation that we just talked about?
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure whether, you can hear me well. I have to immediately say that since I'm representing public policy team, I can't take on legal questions. So this is something that should be directed to Meta's legal team with regards to the existing legislation in the country, jurisdiction over Meta. So as much as it is indeed important, very important issue to discuss, but I think we actually briefly discussed it also before the panel, that there are some issues that require behind the closed doors discussions when we look at the legislation, when we look at the existing situation, and this is like totally different level of engagement based not on the political will, but on legal requirements and responsibilities of platforms. But before jumping into Meta's perspective and actually clarifying some of the definitions, because some of the things that I have heard that previous speakers have been sharing, internally we would use totally different terms for certain things, because first of all, we are a tech platform. Obviously, we're doing content moderation. We're seeing lots of different things, both positive but also negative, happening on our platforms. We see how people use them for good, for coming together, for solving issues, for responding to crises, but also we see how bad actors are abusing our platforms in the fact that they can share information to millions of people in country or abroad. But before all of that, and I'm happy to give you a quick readout of our policies and approaches, I just wanted to share that when you were reading my biography, I think what would be important to stress that I started working in the field of information security back in 2013 and 14. In the eve of Ukrainian revolution and when Russia was annexing Crimea and attacking eastern Ukraine and starting the war in 2014. So many of the, and I'm coming myself from the civil society perspective, I've been working as a fact checker and as an analyst of mechanisms of propaganda and how to share misinformation, how to start information operations. So I strongly sympathize with the civil society sector that is working on these issues. And trust me personally, but also many people at Meta, we aren't taking claims of importance of foreign interference, but also domestic interference lightly, because we have seen both from our personal practices, but also examples from the platform, that these are indeed incredibly serious things. However, the challenge is that when we're looking at the content as such, from the big data perspective of what we're seeing that is being generated by ordinary users, but also bad actors, we have to think about keeping the balance and not going too harsh on several measures of taking down, removing content, applying strikes, because in most of the cases, it might mean that we aren't hurting bad actors who are well organized. I can quickly change the operations, but we will be hurting people who have shared that some information, but they aren't always knowledgeable about every single aspect of the state's life or the geopolitics. So this is the thing that we're always trying to keep in mind, balancing freedom of expression, but also security, and at the same time, looking at data and knowing that as much as we're absolutely aware of bad actors abusing our platforms, we see that there are so many different positive engagements, and whatever measure we are taking, which obviously will be incredibly stark and would impact millions of people in a given country or a given region, we have to be really very smart and not become a censor actually of certain kinds of speeches. And then when it comes to misinformation, disinformation, and cybersecurity, so like these are three totally different buckets from Meta's perspective. And I will start probably from cybersecurity aspect, because I think it's like, for us, it's so starkly different from the content issues that it's like, maybe I will start with just like a few words about how we're thinking about this and what we see is manifesting on our platform. So from the perspective of cybersecurity, meaning preventing hacking of accounts and getting access to accounts in order to download history of conversation, checking the list of friends and connections, or posting some misinformation from the verified accounts of state officials, of members of the parliament, of members of representatives of media or civil society organizations. What is important to understand that when we're looking at this approach from the global perspective and the numbers that we are seeing, while we are talking about rather narrow from perspective of numbers, approaches of foreign states, let it be so, foreign states globally, which are, can be seen as aggressive states, but also from the regional perspective, there would be like reconnaissance actions within some countries, but also within the region. We see that the numbers are actually very small. What we have to be very much aware about and think about media literacy of the wider population are hacking attempts from the perspective of scam and fraud. When business manager accounts are getting hacked, and by this the access to credit cards of people being hacked as well, and they are losing money. Or for example, they just not knowingly submit the information of their credit cards, banking accounts, because they think that they have won a lottery, or they can receive the support from state, for example, for running their small business. And there are lots of different tricks, and we see that from the cybersecurity perspective, from the perspective of keeping private data, but also so private identifiable information, but also credit card and banking information of users, we see that actually civilians are very much under the attack. And indeed, if we're talking about this perspective, starting with media literacy campaigns, which in many cases are very basic. So like one of the most basic things is that, for example, our company never sends private messages, never asks you to submit some form in order to recover your account. And we know for a fact that this is one of the very popular methods to actually trick people into, submitting some form, clicking something. This is how they're losing access to their account. So like there are indeed, I would say, a number of maybe between 5 to 10 very simple steps that people can actually learn, and this will increase their cybersecurity defense and what they can do from the perspective of preventing being abused. And then I do believe, again, like from the perspective of what we're seeing and what we can collaborate with data in our experience, there should be a totally different track with regards to activists, media, politicians, and government representatives, where cyber defense is from the perspective getting the two-factor authentication is an absolute must. Dear friends, if someone of you in this room doesn't have two-factor authentication on your accounts, be it Meta, be it YouTube, be it other accounts, if you aren't routinely changing the passwords to your email or to your social media accounts, please do so. Like if from the first part of my presentation, that would be the only thing that I would love you to remember, please do so, because like this is the first line of defense, and this is incredibly strong. If you're using two-factor authentication, it's incredibly hard actually to compromise different levels of security. And also please be mindful about email, because I think it's usual for everyone that we might created our email addresses like 10 years ago during university, sometimes with some funky names. And we would rather think of changing our Instagram or Facebook passwords, and then email is just like such a big legacy thing that it's just like out there. Quite often we know from the perspective of our experience in Eastern Europe, Poland and Baltic countries, there was a big campaign that was attacking specifically politicians and personnel close to the military. With like cyber reconnaissance groups that we know are tracked back to the Russian special services. They were actually hacking social media accounts in order to post misinformation via hacking the email addresses. So like this is a very close component, and you should think about this like in a compound, that there is a comprehensive approach, and there definitely should be different measures, escalation lines, rapid response mechanism for people who have much bigger impact in case their account is being stolen, or someone can have access to account and post information or go through the messaging. Because in many cases, we're talking about high-level state officials where it's not about posting something from their page, but actually get the conversation, what they're discussing with the rest of the government or the parliament. This is the tricky part. So this is like cybersecurity and what we're seeing from our platforms, and maybe some of the measures that should be taken, but definitely media literacy from the perspective, I would say rather digital literacy. So not only media literacy from the perspective of how to approach content that people see online, how to consume content, how to be very much aware of the trends, because we have representatives of Meta at this panel. When we're talking about young generations, we have to talk to TikTok. and we have to talk about their policies, because youngsters, they live in video format. And this is also very much important to understand that if we're talking about digital and media literacy, we have to keep in mind different age groups and how they consume content online and what are their preferences. Otherwise, our media efforts, both our as platforms, but also the good actors from the government and civil society side, wouldn't be just successful, because you can't have, in this regard, you can't have one message that fits everyone. Yes, you see, I mean, like, that's very good that you're controlling time. And then misinformation and disinformation.
Yeah.
So disinformation, from our perspective, is about behavior. And this is about foreign interference, domestic interference. It's about creating an inauthentic account, hiding the, who the people are, misinforming how important the certain topic of the discussion is, because, like, many people react to the number of reactions, shares, or likes under the post. And, like, if this is being misrepresented, then obviously it also plays on the psyche of people. And from our perspective, we're approaching this from the behavior side. It's not about the content that is being pushed. Sometimes it could be like good efforts, like people mobilizing themselves and they're talking and they would like to push certain narratives, so they would like to defend against something that is happening, or they're just discussing what is happening in the country. But the element of using inauthentic behaviors, of using fake accounts, of using so-called troll accounts, where different people are logging in and posting information, this is just one bucket of our work. And misinformation, from our perspective, is posting manipulation or like not factual information. And from our experience, we know that the absolute majority of content that is not entirely true, not entirely factual, is first of all coming from ordinary users who they aren't expert in social policy of the state. They don't know what inflation rate means. They don't know what the fact that dollar exchange or euro exchange numbers change in the country, what does it mean for the entire economy, and so on and so forth. That's one thing. Another thing, the same problem also goes with journalists. They aren't always deep experts on the topics they're writing. So like lots of different misinformation on manipulation pieces actually are coming from the concept that is called bad journalism, unfortunately. And again, I'm not talking about Western Balkan, so anyone specifically. This is our global experience, and what we see is true for many different regions. And in order to approach this, we have a special program called Third-Party Fact Checkers program. In every and each Western Balkans country, we have a local partner that is certified by International Fact-Checking Network, which is like the golden standard of fact-checking globally. They enter in the special contract agreement with us, where they can rate content from the perspective how manipulative it is, because like there could be content where only title is manipulative but the body of the text is factual, and there could be a totally fabricated story, and we have to approach it differently. So they provide ratings. Based on these ratings, we actually influence the algorithms of content distribution. So the content that is misinforming will be shown lesser or lower in people's feed. It will be harder to find. And we're also using this in order to provide special information labels that this is misinformation. Please do not share it. We use it also from the perspective of the content that people shared previously. So like we will send a notification that you have posted something that have been rated as false. But also if you are trying to post something, you will receive this additional notification and nudge that this might not be factual information. Expert has checked it. Here is the link where you can read debunking articles, so please do not share it. So like these are like three different buckets of how we would think about cybersecurity and threats, but also disinformation and misinformation from the perspective of content or behavior.
Just one very quick question. Do you see in your data that actually the sharing of the content, it gets less when you send the information there, or do you not? Just very
It's
brief.
incredibly powerful.
It is? Okay.
It is incredibly powerful. We have, like from the perspective of being a global company, when we're talking about testing something, we're talking about like dozens of millions of people. So we have tested roughly on the group of between 50 to 60 million users of how they are responding to the labels that this is potentially misinformation. In 93% of all cases, they do not click through and they do not share further. So this is incredibly powerful instrument combined with the fact that it's already shown lower in the feed. So like even if you scroll down enough to find the information and you see the label, in absolute majority of cases, people trust the fact that it might be misinformation, so we shouldn't share it.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on what you said, but I do want to proceed and I know you might not be able to talk about this because it's a legal point, but I'm thinking right now that this kind of self-regulation, wouldn't it be in your interest as well, that is something that's legally obliged of platforms. So other platforms also do it if you see that this is effective. Would this not be in Meta's interest? But I do want to open the fishbowl chair soon. Yes, I have one more question, and then feel free. I don't know if you can, if one person can come up to Oliviera. Before that, though, I just wanted to prepare you, but I see you're much more prepared than I am. When I think about disinformation and about the information system as a whole, I sometimes think it is broken as an ecosystem. It is not only that we have disinformation, foreign information manipulation, but the way we consume information is very difficult. It's fragmented, it's polarizing, and I see in your recommendations, for example, you look a lot at social media, but we also have legacy media in the region that spreads disinformation, that spreads false narratives, and yeah, how do you balance the maybe different generational requirements as well to kind of counter this and to regain trust in an ecosystem that fundamentally pits people against each other?
Of course, media has their part of responsibility, and it is huge. But when we are speaking about the media ecosystem today, we have a basic problem here. While there is over-regulation in the field of media, and why the media, professional media especially, fighting for sustainability, the social networks on the other side are avoiding any kind of regulations. They are more in the sphere of self-regulation. I'm speaking very general, although Meta does something in the past several years, and now we have this new regulation which EU and EU member states enforced. But in general, there is a huge overregulation of the media, and on the other hand, we still have avoiding the regulation from the big tech. They shouldn't, the things shouldn't be like that, because there is a huge responsibility of the social network and big tech towards disinformation and cybersecurity threats, and I would pay attention on that.
Thank you. I saw the woman in. No, I'll take the woman before you, and then you can have the next seat. Please state your name. And if you have somebody who you want to answer primarily, also whom you address the question or comment to. Can we turn on the mic, or is that, I think you might have.
Yeah, Irena Cvitkovic, North Macedonia. Let me be very brief. The recent European External Action Service report on this foreign information manipulation and interference showed this really disturbing trend of disinformation campaigns targeting especially women and LGBTQI. And us as civil society, unfortunately, we were really not that much surprised by these findings of this report, because we personally endured these devastating impacts of these campaigns. Yet, not only this panel, but in general, we see that gendered disinformation are, I think, perceived as having a less serious impact on politics and democracy, despite that the heavily evidence showed something else. So my question for this panel would be, how do you plan to address these issues, and maybe how do you plan to fully recognize and prioritize gender disinformation in your response to these challenges?
Thank you. I would actually like to collect maybe one more your question as well, and then the man in the third row on the side, yeah, I saw you as well, because there are a lot of questions. We'll do a round maybe with 3 questions and then proceed. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Vojislav Ravnić. I'm freelance consultant for media and communication engaged by Montenegro Media Institute. I have 2 questions for the 2 distinguished ladies. As you know, we in Western Balkans, we are exposed to double ring of foreign influence, malign influence in disinformation campaigns. One is from high-tech circles, and another one is among Balkan states. It's as recently recognized by the study, within the study of Council of Europe, that's way of life, the mode operandi of Balkan politics. countries within Balkan politics, they launch campaigns against each other. So I have a question for the lady minister in the government of Montenegro. Montenegro is one of rare countries in the world, I may say, where we do not have a single media, broadcast media with national coverage, which is owned by a legal or political person from Montenegro. All of them are owned by entities from Serbia. My question to the minister, does she found it, despite the fact that we are the open market within our legislation, does she find it's a well-balanced media landscape? Why the broadcast agency, regulatory agency, has not applied the test of plurality, the test of national interest? Do you think that something should be changed in that regard? And if so, how do you intend to change it? The question for the lady that represents high tech, what do you think about freedom of speech fundamentalism? Do you think that very large online platform can contribute to a better world in a situation? Is it a foreign interference when the owner of X platform send a message to UK in the time when they have riots and serious crises that civil war in UK is inevitable? Do you think that's the way to run very large online platform?
Thank you. And one last question. Yeah, you please to the stage, and then we'll do a round of answers.
Thank you. My name is Jabir Derala. I come from Civil. It's a human rights organization in North Macedonia. I'd like to take the opportunity to say that I'm a proud awardee of President Zelensky with the Order of Merit for the successful fight against Russian propaganda. And I'd like to start with that, actually, that we're using many euphemisms in our communication about disinformation, about the warfare that is being waged across Europe and also Western Balkan countries in particular. I'm talking about hybrid warfare, which uses disinformation, uses propaganda, uses hate narratives, nationalist narratives in order to disrupt democracies. Mm-hmm. And that's very important to understand, that we need to drop the gloves and start talking in direct terms. We see a country like Serbia, which is an avenue. It's not a channel, it's an open avenue of the Russian intrusion in the Balkan democracies, which goes through media, but also through business, through politics, through church, through the organized crime syndicates, and other means. That means that we need to really open our eyes and start talking in real terms with direct and unambiguous expressions and find ways to fight that. Otherwise, we're losing the battle anyway. So my question would be, do you think it is possible to drop the gloves and start talking in direct terms with open platforms that directly point out the perpetrators of the warfare that is being waged, and especially having in mind that all these things are connected to ethics as well, not only professional standards, because we live in times of democracy, not democracy, where emotions are being stirred in order to disrupt democracies. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I would start with the topic of gender disinformation. I think this is a problem internationally, and it also, I think, is a problem to democracy itself. It threatens democracy because it makes it harder, or it makes the hurdles harder for women to actually go into the public sphere, and that is very dangerous. Minister, maybe would you like to speak on that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for the questions. The answer or my stance, or the stance of the government of Montenegro, about the gender issues and the rising of the hate speech that is pointed against the LGBT community or gender-based violence. It is in rise in Montenegro, as I think is in the rest of the Western Balkans. And specifically for that, we do not have a unique answer. And the lady was right, the journalist was right when saying that those kind of issues raise less answers and less reaction than maybe some other disinformations or some other contents on the internet. So yes, there are communities which are very, very under attack, especially on the social media, and we are aware of that. There's a small contribution for that not to do so. In this new media law that Montenegro adopted in June this year, we enabled urgent court proceeding for spreading hatred against all communities, not only, it was in a previous law, minority people from minority groups, but now it is an urgent court proceeding. Then another article says that urgent court proceeding due to the spread of hatred based on the request of the party seeking the protection of special rights were enabled, not only based on the prosecutor's request. What does it mean? Before, when someone from minority community or LGBT or any other person who thinks it was under the hate speech, he would by the previous law, he had to do it through the prosecutor's request. But now it is only by asking the person who thinks that is a victim of the hate speech, he could have urgent court proceedings. So I think that is something that we have done just to navigate through the system in a more fast way and more efficient way. Then it is a disclosure of sources. That was also one of the issues. Disclosure of sources is possible only based on a court decision, which led to fixing the interpretation that the prosecutor's request was significant. So when somebody is somebody is on the court file, he does not have to address or disclose his sources if that is not a victim but svedok. I cannot know the word. The witness, if the person is a witness in the case, he has not to be afraid to be disclosed. So those are the new things in the media laws that we did addressing this issue. Hate speech and disinformation and targeting that are gender-based or minority or LGBT-based, they are mostly run through in Montenegro through non-traditional media. I have to say it is on online platform or on the social media, and that is something that we did not consider in our media laws for the time being. I say we are planning to do so when we analyze the DSA and so on, but for the time being, I admit that we did not address those issues, how to, via platforms, and how to protect the citizens, and that's why I forget to mention when we talk about very large online platform and when we talked about recommendation from the civil society, of course, we would like to have a national coordinator for very large online platform, just to be more efficient also in these cases. Because I saw in recommendation for a regional coordinator. As I said, region is very diverse, and sometimes I think it's very distant to cooperate and to talk about immediate problems that are happening online, especially gender-based violence or such. And I think we would benefit so much of a national legal representative who then, that every Western Balkan countries would have one, and then for them to be in direct and in very close contact with the regional large online platform representatives. I think that could be one of the answers to the the being fast in the answering those questions. About the question of a gentleman about the public broadcaster and the publicly owned media in Montenegro, the gentleman is right. We have 6 televisions with national frequency that covers the Montenegro, and only one of them is our national public broadcaster. So RTCG is, of course, publicly owned and publicly budgeted and sponsored, but the other 5, they have their licenses from the previous period, and it is true that the Agency for Electronic Media gave them that permission to operate in Montenegro. That is true because of the legislation that was like that. Because if the agency would refuse, let's say for a recent broadcaster, Adria, to refuse to give them the license, they would break the law, because according to law, the law was such. So if you prove that you have if you have the people, if you have equipment, they did not perform a test of plurality because it was not under the law. And now it is the time being. We have 5 broadcasters with national frequency that are all owned by owners are in Serbia, and 1 public broadcaster. What we did what is new in the new media laws and our new strategies, that after their license expired, and for some of these television, it would be next year or in a 2 year, the test will be done, and of course the eligibility for the renewance of the license would be done. So it does not mean, if now it's 5-1, if we are speaking about ownership, it does mean that in next year that would be as such, because the license maybe will not be renewed. So, of course, it is a problem, but that is how the laws were. That were the laws in Montenegro, and the Agency of Electronic Media should apply to law. Of course, that is a thing that should be monitored and analyzed in the future times, especially because we know that we are subject to the various interests. We are not against the free market, of course, nor the Croatian, nor the Bosnian investors. We are, of course, the open market, but we are aware of this situation in Montenegro, and we will monitor it very closely, and we will make a policy according to that. One of that is analyzing of the license that are now, and see what we can do in the future. The third question was. Yes, of course. The third question, of course, as a small country, we know that Montenegro, as every other Balkan country, is subjected to influence of the global and, of course, of the regional players. And the important thing is that we are, in Montenegro, we are very aware of this, and we know what is our responsibility to expose such a propaganda, to take the gloves off, and to reduce it to the level that does not pose a threat to the Montenegrin, to our stability. Of course, once again, I have to say that that kind of narrative is spread through also non-traditional medias, and that aligns to my previous answers, that we would benefit maybe also in that area with the national representative and closer connection to the very large online platforms. Of course, and another thing, what we through our media strategy, how we want to fight against it. We are aware of the problem. At the beginning of the next year, our media strategy states that we will organize a network against disinformation, hate speech, and online violence. We plan to form that new institutional body that will give us an overview of the attacks, of the malign influence, of the disinformation campaigns maybe, and that we could, through that network, react accordingly. And we hope that network will be one of the answers of that question of the malign influence, because I have to say that we do not have systematic answer or unique answer as a government. We do have debunking NGOs such as DFC, raskrinkavanje.me. Those are non-governmental organizations that are doing the fact-checking and so on, but we do not have yet a governmental approach to this question. So I think the network could be one part of the answers to that. Of course, strategic communication of one government towards the malign influence could not be based only on analysis of 1 or 2 or 10 NGOs. It should be a multi-strategic approach of all the governmental and non-governmental bodies, and we have to have consensus of how to respond, when to respond, how intensive to respond, when to take off the gloves, of course. So we have to form alliance in Montenegro on the governmental level. We think the network is one of the things that could use. Debunking companies, of course, will be the part of the network. We already planned them to be in that network for fighting. But of course, we as a Western Balkan countries, as I said before, we should fight together against the disinformation and against the malign influence. And that's why I'm strongly for the forming of alliance and to all the partners to be participative, like the CEFTA is for economic, we to form a body or the kind of alliance against these malign influences from the region as well as the global.
Thank you. I actually want to look at you, Katharina, as well, because we heard about the question on information warfare, the role of platforms, and you also earlier said that a lot of it is misinformation and not disinformation that is spread by private people who believe in that. But then we do see that a lot of narratives are implemented by foreign actors or by also internal actors. So we have foreign information manipulation, but we also have internal information manipulation, and that then is being taken up. And then, of course, it is legal and lawful for private citizens to post something, but the entire structure behind that, I think, often is problematic and is malign. So maybe you can touch upon the question of free speech and the role of platforms and how to strike a balance on platforms, and also on the point of information warfare. When do you see something as information warfare as a platform, and where do you see your responsibility to stop that?
Thank you. But again, I would also allow myself to touch the gender question as well, because, you know, like, since many of things happening on our platforms, and again, excuse me for being so pedantic about the terms, but, you know, as public policy person, if I can give any representatives of state or civil society sector any advice about how to talk to platforms, we are operating based on community standards, and our community standards are public and are quite detailed. And, you know, like, because when I hear your question, there are like 10 different, totally different topics, which are belonging to 10 different teams. So like, depending on how you frame the question and what exactly is the problem, you would receive a different answer. So when we're talking about gender issues, like, first thing that we have to keep in mind that the most important thing, like the golden standard, and the only reason why we would make any kind of content decisions, being like taking down, applying strikes for people who are violating, is the violation of our community standards. Hate speech and attacking people based on their protected categoristics, and gender will be one of them, is the violation of our community standards. It doesn't have to be misinformation campaign. It doesn't have to be financed by foreign agents or some local agents. If there is an attack or an individual based on, like, if it's a hate speech or it's a bullying and harassment, this is something that has to be taken down. It can be reported internally. Sometimes we're doing proactive sweeps in order to take it down as well. For journalists and activists, there exist separate portals where we explain what are the additional measures that they can use, even on the level of their account. If you're running, for example, a page, like, you can have, for example, as simple as it is, like keywords that you wouldn't be allowed certain comments being published because they contain already hate speech or bullying and harassment. So like, from the tooling perspective, there are already some measures, and like, this is content policy. It doesn't have to do anything. It can be one person that is attacking someone based on their protected categoristics, and this is already a violation, and it will be taken down. From the perspective of mis and disinformation, again, like, if this is misinformation and fact checkers are checking it, like, we can talk about some different different narratives, misrepresentation of concepts. But like this is still a bit different than attacking someone because they represent this gender or this identity and not the other. And disinformation, and quite often what we would see, there can be a combination of disinformation campaigns that are attacking certain individual or political parties or even worldview, you know, like calling someone being representative of an ideology, if we're talking about gender identities, yes, and like not talking about people and concepts. This is already something that is hurtful and really very painful for people who are attacked. So, like, if we even talking about disinformation, but there is an element of our violation of community standards, we're talking about combination of two policies, and like we will be taking down content, but we also will be taking down accounts who are spreading this. So again, like there are lots of nitty-gritties in the details. The thing is that how you can report this, how you can work with state structures to like combine it, not only taking down information on social media, but obviously are there any repercussions for real life people or institutions, organizations who run this type of campaigns? And at this point, it's important to understand that we aren't law enforcement. We are technical platforms that are responsible for the content that being posted on our platforms and how we use algorithmic solutions to spread it. However, our role is stopping on this one. Like we wouldn't be able to work like a law enforcement agency in a given country and go offline and find the group who is standing behind it because we simply don't have instruments. We only have information that we have based on our platform. But again, like, and there are special resources for civil society activists and journalists in order how they can protect themselves from different types of attacks, be it hate speech and bullying and harassment, and like it's useful to familiarize themselves because even from the tooling perspective, there are special things. Now, honestly, I mean, I don't think that I'm in a position to comment the CEO actions of a different company while representing another big tech platform. So I will like respectfully drop this question. But, you know, like the thing that, and I already touched upon this in my speech, from the perspective of content policies, and we are making decisions based on content policies. There is no automation, algorithms, classifiers, or our human content moderators. They are taking down content because they don't like it or because they are biased. Like we have built so many different safeguards in the system. We are doing every 3-day check-ins of what is going on because we understand the responsibility. Providing the freedom, the place where people can speak freely and respecting the voice, and at the same time, creating the safe space where they can feel safe and not attacked. And again, like we're talking about democratic countries, we're talking about more fragile countries, and we're talking about authoritarian countries where social media would be the only means where people can share their point of view, because otherwise they will face legal repercussions from the state. Or, you know, one of the countries that I'm covering is Ukraine with an ongoing invasion. And for many people from the occupied regions, but also from the perspective of the entire country, how they're living through the trauma of what is going on with them, having access to social media and being able to share it is of utmost importance, both internally for the country, but also how they share this information experience with the rest of the world. And then going to your question, I mean, like, I think it's pretty ironically to have Meta answering this. We are so first of all, by Russia, we have been designated as terrorist and extremist organization as a response to the steps that company has taken in the eve of Russian invasion. And one of the things how Russian telecom regulator came to us and demanded of us is that we stop fact-checking. And we stood by this thing, and we stood by our policy and by our fact-checking partners, and we said, like, this is our program, and we wouldn't be bound into some, you know, like state pressure on us because they don't like the fact-checking and something. And the thing that independent fact-checkers are checking what is state saying, what is state on media saying, and so on and so forth. And this was resulted in a step of actions that led to banning of Facebook and Instagram and us being designated. We quarterly publish reports on coordinated and authentic behavior and threat analysis, which are public. The most recent was published at the end of August. And whenever we find the network that is doing this malign efforts and is misinforming people, using fake accounts in order to spread information, we're attributing it to them. So far from Western Balkans regions, we have attributed networks to North Macedonia, which were running so-called troll farms, attacking both North Macedonia, but also like, you know, it was service for hire. So like they were attacking someone in the US, someone in China, India, and so on and so forth. The most recent one was from Serbia, and we found links to the ruling party, and we as a company, we said it straightforwardly. It's in our public report, and it's in our public record that we have found the links to the representatives from the ruling party, and this is what we are doing. Another example from Georgia, another country that I'm covering. Over there, we have found CAB networks, so like coordinated and authentic behavior networks, both run by the people affiliated with the government or employed by the government, ruling party, but also opposition, so like all over the place. And every single time, we have been disclosing this information. Every single time we have solid grounds in order to claim that we can establish the connection, or we know people, organizations, and we are saying it out loud. Even if it results that government doesn't want to talk to us, even if there is, you know, like huge hate campaign on in the country claiming that we are siding with this political side or another. So like from this perspective, like I'm really fairly strongly standing on the point that we have done a lot, not only from the perspective of taking down, but also disclosing what we have taken down. It's called Threat Analysis Reports. You can find it at the Transparency Center at Meta. And it continues being the case. Every single time we will find another network from this region or from the other, we will be disclosing information, and we aren't like playing with words. We are saying straightforwardly, this is disinformation, or this is foreign interference, and we are attributing this to the government, to country, if we find the links. So from that perspective, we have rather strong standing, I would say.
I would like to take 2 more questions and then
Would you like
wrap
to answer?
up. Please be very brief. I see the woman in the green in the back over there, and I've seen you waving at me for quite a while. So maybe if you can come, and please be very brief, because we have 10 minutes left, and I do want to have a little bit of a wrap-up from my panelists as well.
Thank you. I will try to be brief.
No, don't try, be brief. It's hard, but we are all grown up, and I think we are capable of doing this.
We are indeed all grown up, but the topics are very important. And since during these 3 days we've been discussing about shrinking civic spaces, about declining of democracy throughout the region, and I would like to keep the discussion focused on the Western Balkans. And disinformation and cyber threats
are... Could you please just very quickly state your name?
Yes, I'm Orchidea. I'm coming from Albania, Center of Science Innovation for Development. And disinformation and cyber threats are really closely connected to digital rights. And digital rights in the region as human rights are seeing a very steep decline. And while I understand and welcome what the representative of Meta was talking about, this is a very nice space for us as civil society also to engage with them, since it's very hard to get in touch with them on a daily basis. And attacks in the region are multi-layered, especially domestic attacks throughout to civil society and the media as well. But I have just 2 questions, or I don't know, because I believe that this panel also has the power to go back to your places of work and also take some messages there and to see and to stir some sort of change. The EU, we know, is protected in terms of this relation with very large platforms, and I also welcome the recommendations on the report on having the EU as an interlocutor with the platforms to have legal representatives in the region, because this is we are quite lacking, and this is quite a necessity for us. But the EU is protected by GDPR, and many countries of the region have already approximated their legislation with GDPR. Some other countries are on the way to doing that, but we are not protected. And the most recent case of training AI models with public data of Meta users is one of the cases where EU countries, you know, they are protected, but when it comes to the Western Balkans, we are removed the choice to be part or not of these elements. And for us, data is very important, because we are not being only misused, our data is not being only misused by different platforms, but also from our own governments. And my second question actually regards, and I would like to, sorry.
That was more a comment than a question, I guess. The question of...
No, yeah, it's a... How do you see that, and how can we get a resolution when it comes to that? Because we are, so the use of training AI models with data from Western Balkans. Because as I mentioned, there are civil society organizations in the region taking upon and taking that issue up, but since this is a platform for us to ask the question. And also we're part of this Southeast Regional Digital Rights Network, which includes more than 30 organizations of the region working in different areas on digital rights. And I would like to just mention an article from July 12 in 2024 saying the guessing game Facebook's unpredictable algorithm removes content on Srebrenica genocide. That's an issue. So you mentioned the algorithm, you develop algorithms and they regulate or they regulate content production. But that has been an issue for civil society organizations, but also for populations. The panel before this one was about reconciliation, and it's not only an issue that regards how countries are communicating with each other, but also the way that the platforms are introducing or not data. And I would like to have some sort of feedback from you on that as well, because
I'm sorry, on Srebrenica or on what? On reconciliation?
No, the question and your comment would be very much welcomed on how the algorithms are banning the use of genocide and removing content, including the name. But the Bosnian market is a very small one, and the whole Western Balkans market is quite a small one when it comes to that, and this content is being removed from Facebook algorithms.
Thank you. We're running very late, so I'll have we have a break, we have lunch afterwards, so you're probably free to engage in comments as well, but please, 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 I'll give you a minute and I'll actually cut you off if you are not quick enough.
All right. I'm Filip Stanovski from Metamorphosis Foundation from North Macedonia. Yeah. We come from a background of organization striving for digital rights, but also as fact-checkers, part of all the relevant mentioned networks. And I would like to emphasize what Olivera already mentioned, the building of trust as a precondition for countering disinformation, because a few years ago there was even denial of the problem of disinformation as such, while our experience is that in order to have a proper response, and there needs to be a systemic response, and to do it in an inclusive way in order to build the trust. Because in North Macedonia, we had an initiative by 11 NGOs, including here present Civil, who pushed the government, which showed political will at the time, to start the process of creating a national strategy for resilience to disinformation. However, as elsewhere in the Balkans, we had elections and the process is on pause. We hope to continue it, but I would like also to appeal to the international community to help such grassroots initiatives in a way also from top down, because as part of the European integration and enlargement process, the countries are now obliged to include FIMI as part of Chapter 31 of the Acquis, which is the Foreign Security and Defense Policy. So expanding the view on disinformation, not only as a media problem, which we discussed to a degree, but also as a security problem and a problem that affects all sectors of society, including the private sector. Mm-hmm. So I would like to ask what you think are the steps that need to be taken by both the international community, the donors, then the civil society and the national institutions in order to build this trust. What would you recommend from your own perspectives?
Thank you. We'll have a very brief wrap-up. So I'll love to start with you, Olivera. And you can also go just like a brief wrap-up. What are the steps to take? I think maybe you can also tie back to report on that. And 2 minutes.
I would say mindset. That is long-term task for all of us. When I'm saying mindset, I would say that we can see very often how politicians manipulate and misusing the informative chaos which we live now. So the responsibility is the part from the media, the part from the government, and also the part of the social network and big tech. We are all the part of the problem and also the part of the solution. We have we have a huge responsibility, but not equal one, because the power is there in the governments and is in tech companies.
Thank you, Katerina. And I think maybe the AI training data question for me doesn't go directly towards disinformation. And because we're short on time, maybe you can also engage into that discussion. But I think that was more of a comment on you to be more aware and that. But maybe you can touch upon the algorithms, the freedom of speech, how you balance that with a closing remark as well.
You want me to fit the answer about algorithms into, like, it would take us 2 days, because like the thing is that it shouldn't be taken lightly. That's one thing. Like, that's not one algorithm. There are different algorithms for different subsections of different platforms, be it Facebook or Instagram. Another thing is that there is lots of information that is already publicly available. And quite often the issue that we have facing lots of different interlocutors, from states represented public sector, civil society, is that I can say that they aren't always know very well what they are talking about based on the information that has already been provided. And quite often, like, it creates unnecessary time back and forth, because we have to educate, first of all, to understand what definitions we're using, what exactly is being meant by this side or another. There is lots of information. Like, there is Newsroom, the website called Newsroom from Meta. There is Transparency Center that is explaining our policies and our enforcement. It also touches upon algorithmic solutions. It explains how content violations and strikes that people are acquiring influence the content distributions from your account or from your page. There's lots of different information. So I would say that, on one hand, in order to have constructive discussion, there should be a level playing field and understanding of different terms and concepts and expectations. From this perspective, it's important to understand that, be it Alphabet, be it Meta, be it X, be it TikTok, you're talking, first of all, to big technological companies that are quite often might have a different view of how we're approaching things and how we're approaching solutions, because we can introduce technical solution, but it's not always something that is needed given some pressure on social issues in a given country or specific challenges. So like that's one level you have to learn. We have to learn, obviously, one another. We have to understand what kind of state structure we're talking about, what kind of civil society coalition or specific NGOs we're talking about. But I also would like to ask lots of different partners to be mindful that, yes, big tech is a specific platform, this is a specific beast, let's say so. And that is why there should also be some kind of approach and understanding that these are platforms that are functioning in a specific way. There are content policies, there is a content governance that we are using, and so on and so forth. And probably the last thing that I would actually say from the perspective of how to, because one of the parts of the both problems and solutions is that how to get in touch. So in many cases, there would be either trusted partners in a given country or fact-checking organizations that have direct line of contact with us, managers who are overseeing them, and so on and so forth. And instead of reinventing the wheel and trying to find 20 different points of contact to big tech, you have to actually coordinate with each other. And also, in many cases, coordinate with state institutions, because they would have different paths of how getting in touch with social media platforms or big tech. So that is why, in many cases, before coming to big tech and saying, like, let's cooperate, let's build trust, I think there should be also homework done on the level of the country, where there is a coalition of NGOs working on several issues. There are points of contact, or like there is a state institution with which civil society works really very well, because otherwise, this would be the perfect scenario when we know that there are point of contacts for the country and we can work obviously with them, because otherwise it becomes too fragmented and frankly quite impossible to keep in touch with everyone and be very much effective and efficient in this cooperation.
Thank you. And then maybe the last word to you, Minister, and maybe also touch upon the notion that disinformation is not only fought by debunking, but also by creating trust in governmental organizations, institutions, and trust among the population again, and between each other. So maybe what your views on that are. I think we have
For
a
me,
minute left.
you said it very nicely because it is a type of a definition of cohesion or consensus that we align all about what is threatening us, what we should be afraid of, and how we all must react. So to have that common stance, we have to have a knowledge and we have to build trust in one another. So that is an issue, and in Montenegro, it's also a very difficult task and challenge to form such a coalition of NGOs, governmental representatives, media sector, to form such a thing who will have a general stance and consensus about the issues. But that is something of course we should done. And I must say for this wrap up that I'm very happy and very pleased to be here today and to hear from the big tech, from Katarina, not just exact definitions, but also the proofs of what our big tech that are accountable and responsible are doing so, and that their elements and their activities also provide results already. As she said, if you have disclaimer, if you have something below that information, and information is harder to find, that the general public will restrain themselves for further investigating that echo chamber. So this is very good to know and very efficient and very good for us to know that the media literacy, actually, the media literacy is one crucial topic about all of this, what we are saying today. Whether this is disinformation, misinformation, or cybersecurity, fraud, or scam, to form and to build a citizen that is aware, that is well educated, that knows how to navigate, whether through your activities or through your algorithms, whether to something that we do as a country to enhance and strengthen the citizen approach to it. I think that is essential. And one more thing to mention, my dear colleague from Ministry of Education is here, and not to forget to mention that media literacy and digital literacy is supposed to be like a topic in an elementary and in high schools in Montenegro. Of course, so that is very, very important thing that I have to emphasize. And another thing, so cybersecurity, media literacy is one of the weapons or the victory against all these threats. Next thing that I wanted to say and to refer to national strategy.
Very short.
Very short. National strategy
hungry.
against disinformation, as the gentleman from Macedonia said, whether it's coming from NGOs or for governmental, that is something I would strongly support. And of course, all the things that we're talking here today, especially those low-hanging fruit recommendations, is something to work on and to look forward to be fulfilled in, let's say, a year or two, and we could be satisfied with that.
Thank you so much. I feel like your report has done a great service to people who are engaged and who want to do better, and who are taking up maybe the low-hanging fruits to start with. This is a very important discussion. I see that there are a lot of questions left unanswered or comments left unsaid. I hope we have the opportunity to do so while eating something and then later in conversation as well. But first of all, thank you so much. I learned a lot today. It was very interesting talking to you, and I hope you have a wonderful Friday.
Thank you.